Welcome to the Leedz Edutainment Podcast, featuring in-depth interviews with people in hip-hop culture, based out of New England. Leeds. How you doing?
I'm good, brother. How about yourself?
Good. You good to go on your end?
Yeah, I'm good to go, man. Just I'm at my office or whatever, just whole lot of merch, bro. I'm sure you could see what's going on. So
We'll take a look at that later. I'd like to welcome everybody to the Leedz Edutainment Podcast. You can check us out on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. Please follow us on both of those streaming platforms, as well as like and subscribe on YouTube if you can. That helps us out. We got a very special guest today, a guy that's been doing it for a while, rapper, artist, businessman, substantial. How are you, brother?
peace. I'm good, brother. How about yourself?
Good. I also forgot educator too, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Wait,
Yeah,
so what, you're in your office right now?
yeah. I'm at my office in Virginia. What was it? We have a office at this place called Crescendo Studios. It's like a black box theater. It's a music school. They got recording studios here. And then upstairs, we have an office along with a couple other companies. So just prepping to ship out all this merch from the pre-orders from the album and all that,
Yeah, sorry, my phone just went a little wacky. That's the Adultish album you got there, the physical copies.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, we're definitely going to talk about that in a little bit. But you say you're in Virginia. You're originally from Maryland, correct?
Yeah. Not too far away from where I am now. I grew up in Prince George's County, Maryland. Probably lived there longer than I lived anywhere else, and still go out there pretty frequently and stuff. But based in VA now.
So DMV, is that technically what it is?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Great music scene you guys got there.
Oh, thank you, man. Thank you. It's dope to see the rest of the world catching on and stuff.
Yeah, it's funny because traditionally you've been around for a while, and your style is more like East Coast style, but that New York Northeast style in the beginning, at least I should say.
Mm-hmm.
That DMV sound, did that exist down there? Because the DMV sounds a lot different now, but back then, your style you're doing, did that match DMV at the time?
I would say certain artists. That's the thing about our scene. It's like it's diverse, right? Like so.
Right.
Like if folks kind of came up like in the scene that was more like the freestyle or battle rap scene, or they grew up on like native tongues and stuff like that. A lot of folks in this area grew up listening to Tribe and stuff, so yeah, there's a section of us that's heavily influenced by that. There's a lot of us that grew up listening to a lot of down south artists and stuff. When I say down south, I'm talking about pre-Atlanta. I'm talking about like Rap a Lot days and stuff like Scarface. Most dudes that are from here, Scarface will come up in like their top 5, right? And so you can hear some of that influence in certain artists too. So I would say the style I'm doing it existed here, but it wasn't necessarily the only style that existed here. And go-go music is like is probably our the, what do they call it? What's the term that the Grammys use now? Oh man, I'm forgetting the word, but like go-go is the sound that was created like in this region, DC specifically. And so a lot of artists, even if they do different types of hip hop or other music, you kind of hear this pocket groove. And a lot of folks have a certain flow here where they really get in groove with the music because it's a live music scene here that's real heavy and has been for years.
You're talking about go-go music. What is the definition of go-go music? I remember dealing with it before. What exactly is it? It's band disco? Is it a form of disco?
Nah, it's more like I would say it's kind of like a spinoff of funk music, right? Like its foundation is more funk than anything else. It's just a lot more percussion heavy. Congos, and it's just various percussion instruments and stuff, from cowbells to all the times. It's like, you know, and so it's real funky, has a dope little groove, a dope pocket, like it's known for these pocket grooves and stuff. And so it's been a mainstay, like it's been the main damn that like yo, I'm trying to really remember this term that they coined.
We'll come back to.
Yeah, for sure. It's messing with me.
It's all good. I hate that when you hang up on
Yeah,
something.
yeah, it's on the tip of my tongue, man.
Right,
You know?
right. The reason I remember because when Wale was breaking out in the beginning, he's from the DMV, correct?
Yep. Yeah.
So like that was the thing. Like when we started doing shows in Boston, it was like Wale's bringing a go-go band. Like that was the thing, and that was new to us. Like up here in the Northeast, being in Boston, we were like, "What the you know?"
Right, right.
Like, what is this? But that kind of that's what put that sound on the map for us up here. It's like kind of Wale and DMV and all that. So it's good to see it.
Yeah, and it's crazy because it's been in like in hip hop in some way, shape, or form for like a very long time, right? Like you know, you think back to like early Kid and Play and like Salt and Pepper songs. They had go-go grooves in there. Even MC Hammer at one point in time like did like a go-go joint. You know what I mean?
Yeah, West Coast. Yeah, right.
Yeah. So it's
the Bay Area was the Bay Area, right? The Bay Area was is technically into go-go. Is that what Hammer's?
No, I'm not necessarily saying that. I'm saying like go-go at one point in time like, you know, had certain songs that would make it to the mainstream. Like probably the biggest song, or one of the big songs that a lot of people know outside of Bustin' Loose by Chuck Brown, you know, which a lot of people who don't know go-go kind of look at like it's just like a funk record. But it's a original go-go record. But then you got songs like what was it? The Butt by EU, which was in a Spike Lee movie, right? And so that was yeah, like they even had that song. They were talking about that song at the Grammys one year, which is crazy, you know.
Did you ever make did you make go-go music? Did you tap into that or?
So like I pull elements of go-go music into some of the songs that I make, but like the songs are still hip hop. It's like, you know, I know enough like being from here to know that like even though I pull influence from go-go from time to time, it's still hip hop at its core. And so like most people in the go-go scene wouldn't consider those songs proper go-go songs, you know what I mean?
Right. Just put my thing on airplane mode here. I don't know if it's me beeping or you. Go back to Native Tongues. I'm gonna ask you favorite Tribe Called Quest album. I got you.
Favorite.
Favorite.
Yeah, probably it's probably Low End Theory. Yeah, it's probably Low End Theory.
Tough to beat.
Yeah. Like I mean, you know, Midnight Marauders is a close second for me. But yeah, it's Low End Theory. That's the one. I mean, I liked them before, but from that moment on, I was like, yeah, these guys. You know what I mean?
And since I got you down there too, favorite Outkast album.
Ooh, oh man, yeah, and I love Outkast. I love both of those groups. Favorite Outkast album. Man, it might be. Damn, that's a tough one. Maybe Aquemini. Yeah, man. Probably Aquemini is the one I played the most. I mean, I love I love most of their stuff, but yeah, I definitely put some extra mileage on Aquemini. I think that was when I was living in New York too, and so moving, you know, I wasn't in Atlanta. Maryland is a lot closer to the South than New York is, obviously. But I was living in New York when that album dropped, and I remember it dropped, I think, the same day as Jay-Z's second album. I think so.
Third. It was a Hard Knock Life. It was the volume 2. That was a big day.
Album,
I think Black Star dropped that day too. That's like one of the legendary days. And
yeah. And I remember coming out to the store and folks was like, "Yo, what's in the bag, B?" In Brooklyn, they was, "What's in the bag, B?" And I was like, "Yo, that Outkast," and dudes like booby. They was like, "Oh, come on, son, you ain't cop that J, or like you ain't cop Black Star," and it just made me play it even harder.
I copped them all. I caught them
Yeah,
all.
yeah.
Back then I was a DJ, so I had them all on vinyl. I
Right.
had to
I
cop
was in
two
college,
copies.
so I was in college. I could afford one. That was it.
Yeah, you got the good one. I mean,
Right, right.
um, word. So when did you start rapping then?
I started rapping seriously. I started rapping seriously probably when I was about 14.
Yeah,
Like so it was like ninth grade year high school. But I was playing around writing rap since I was 10. You know what I mean?
right, right. I come across you for the first time. Substantial. First time I hear Sam Substantial is on Happy FU songs
Ah, yeah.
with
That's what's up.
extended fam, which was
Yeah.
Pac FM,
Mm-hmm.
Tone Deaf, you, and Session, right?
Yep. Yeah, man.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
was just
that's the
checking
first
with
time I
Pac
heard of
this
Substantial.
weekend.
That was the first time I
Yeah.
heard Substantial. So was
That's
that
what's up.
one of the you when how did you align with those guys? Because I've done a lot of business with QN5 over the
Yeah.
years. I know those guys well. How did that alignment happen?
Yeah, man. Shout out to my brothers, man. Shout out to Pac, shout out to Session and Tone.
Oh yeah.
I was kicking it with Pac this past weekend. He was the first one I met. I met him in Brooklyn in '98. It's funny how we met because my homegirl Shu, she would chop it up with Pac on I think the Duck Down chat room back in the day. And so when she came to visit me in Brooklyn, she was like, "Yo, I'm about to link up with my homeboy and stuff." And you know, typical big brother, you know, big homie. Like I'm like, "Yo, I'm gonna roll with you. Make sure you good." And so, and that's when she introduced me to Pac. And you know, we hit it off. We see each other at the open mics and all of that. And before there was EFAM, him and I would write Pakistan, right? Like almost like the country, but we just put a Y in the middle, and so it's like Spanish Pakistan. And we were running real tough for a minute. Then we met Mecca, and then we would. I think he met Tone first through the battle scene, and Tone linked us with Session. And invited us all to his studio to record a joint, which is a song called "Evil That Pens Do," and that was the really like the beginning
Huh.
of Extended Fam. You know,
Yeah. It was a nice project you guys did. That's the very
Thank
back in the underground hip hop sandbox automatic hip hop site
yeah,
days, dude. You know what I mean? Like, right?
yeah,
You guys had that CD. That's the first time I saw it. I was like, who are these guys? But
yeah.
I mean, I knew a Tone Deaf before. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? I knew who Tone was.
Right.
But that was like I remember that. Now you also link some of your early success to linking up with am I pronouncing this right? Nujabes? Is that
It's
Nujabi?
it's Nujabes.
Nujabes. I'm sorry. I'm probably
Yeah,
not the
no
only one
worries,
that meant
man.
everyone
I've
gets
heard them
that wrong.
all. I've heard all the variations.
Nujabes,
Yeah,
who
it's
was it?
Nujabes.
For those who don't know, Japanese producer. Tell me a little more about him because you
Sure.
probably know much more than I do.
Yeah. So, Japanese producer, mostly known for like the work he did on a anime called Samurai Champloo, which used to air on Adult Swim on Cartoon Network. Prior to all of that happening, I signed with him. The first record deal I ever signed was with his label called Hideout Productions in Japan. That was back in '99. So that deal took place, and the work I started doing with him actually happened a little bit before EFAM was released. And so, yeah, man, he with his label, he was putting out stuff with me. He collaborated with Shingo too, Pace Rock, and Fat John of the 5Ds. Later on, he'd go on to work. Well, early on, he also worked with legendary hip hop artist named Funky DL from out of the UK.
Absolutely.
And then later on, people like CL Smooth and stuff, and people know him for a ton of his work with Uyama Hiroto as well, and a host of others. But yeah, man, he was just running his independent label, making some really unique hip hop. A lot of what he was doing early on sounded a bit more throwback, like a lot of the stuff like we came up on, you know. But eventually, when he started to do his solo records, he kind of would dive into like soulful house and a lot of live instrumentation, so more jazz and things like that. So his albums were like an amalgamation of all of these different things, right?
And
And
he was
yeah,
playing instruments too. Like he was working with musicians, correct? Or was he sampling?
yeah. So most of his stuff was sample based, but he
Oh, it
still
was okay.
but he also played he played flute. He would collaboration would do a lot of collaborations with Uyama Hiroto, who played keys. He's a multi instrumentalist. Who plays everything from brass to keys to strings. You know what I mean? So he
Right.
played on a lot of Nujabes stuff as well.
I did a Shingo 2 show probably
Mm-hmm.
about 5 years ago, which was a whole tribute to him. And
Mm-hmm.
everybody came out for it. It was a great show, man. It was wild.
Yeah, that's dope.
How did
That's dope.
how did he how did you link with him? How did you meet this guy early in your career?
Hmm. Yeah, man, listen, if anybody want to know the value of going to college, right? Like, I mean, outside of quote unquote a degree, the value in college a lot of times is the connections, right? Like the people you
Absolutely.
meet.
Right.
And so, shout out to my boy Tomo. Tomo was from Japan originally, and we would hang out, me, him, my man Visco Smith, who's a really dope artist who's out here. Visco used to DJ for me, and I was on a mixtape. Me and Tomo was on a mixtape that he did, and Tomo moved back to Japan for the summer until the following school year. And while he was out there, he was working at Nujabes' record store, basically. So, long story short, Nujabes asked him one day, he was like, "Man, you know any dope rappers in New York?" And it was crazy because New York has no shortage of dope rappers. So, but of all the people he could have listed, he mentioned me. And then he had that mixtape that we hopped on with my man Visco. And yeah, man, he heard it, was impressed, and was like, "Man, can you put me in touch with this dude?" And so he reached out, he passed him my number, and Nujabes reached out that summer. This was like summer of '99, and basically, I thought it was a crank call. Originally, I almost hung up on, and because dude was like, "Yeah, man, I like this stuff a lot," but like a really thick accent. He's like, "Yo, I would like this stuff a lot if you could send me more of your stuff and I dig it, I'd like to sign you to my label to do a whole album." And so he flew me out to Japan after I signed the deal, and we recorded like close to 30 tracks in a month, like over 20 some tracks, something like that. You know?
Did that album come out? So you have a lot of albums out. So forgive
Yeah,
me. I try to go through them all and try to figure out which one's which. But did your
yeah.
album with him? Which album was that?
That's To This Union, a Son Was Born.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you had also had other albums where he was doing remixes and other production on it too, right? From what I saw.
Well, see, that's the only one. I mean, some of the stuff we did is also on the mixtape I did, Substantial Evidence, which
Okay.
came out not too long after the album. But most of what we did for my stuff is in my early works, like
Right.
first 2 or 3 projects.
Right.
But I'm on all of his albums with the exception of like the soundtracks he did for that he featured on for Samurai Champloo.
And he died tragically in a car accident, correct?
Yeah, it was a car related death. That was back in 2010.
Damn. Such a shame, man. Such a
Yeah.
shame. From here, though, so you have to deal with him, and then you start putting out a lot of your own solo stuff, right? You
Mhm.
just you kind of hit it hard, right? For the next for a while, you're putting out albums, you're touring. I read that you toured 20 different countries. Is that correct?
Yeah, about that. Yeah, because like what was it? After working with him, even while I was working with him, I was already working with Tone and Q and 5, Pack, and
Yep.
all of them.
Yep.
And so by the time we geared up to do my second album, I actually signed with Q and 5
Okay.
to release Sacrifice. And while doing that, that's when I toured a lot with Cunning Linguist. We did most of the United States. We did Canada. Then I went to Europe with them. But outside of the stuff I was doing with them, I was constantly back and forth to Japan.
Yeah.
And then, just different opportunities, man. I did some stuff I wrote a song with my brother Chu Fu and Jay. and that was for Bentley Motors, and that took us to Shanghai, China, right? And, a bunch of these organizations I work with doing cultural diplomacy work and education stuff through hip hop has led me to places like Uganda and then Romania, with Next Level. So yeah, man, just just getting these stamps, you know what I mean? Getting these passport stamps,
Pretty impressive being aligned with QN5 and was I forgot how to pronounce it already.
Nujabes.
Nujabes early in your career. That's two good cosigns and alignments early.
Thanks, man.
You talk about licensing work. I was pretty amazed at the amount of licensing work that you've actually been done. That's a big thing for those that don't know. That licensing is a good check in hip hop, and it's good to get your songs placed. It helps you get recognized as well. But you had licensing for companies as Ford, Amazon, Uber. You have been in movies, Kevin Hart movies. You've been in video games. That's pretty impressive. How did you make all that happen, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, man. A lot of networking and stuff. Just I think a lot of folks in this scene, like, from what I've seen, they move in a lot of the same circles, right? Like, and I'm talking about the ones who seem to not get certain opportunities. They kind of spend a lot of their time in the same places with the same people. And if those people have limited resources and access, they can only do so much for you, right? And so me, I've been blessed where it's like I got different friends and different people I associated with in the various different places I go. And then, like, I'm a person that there's a lot of stuff that I'm into that's quote unquote like nerd type stuff that at that point early in my career, people frowned on that. I mean, hell, keep it a buck. People frowned on you being on the internet real heavy back in the day. Like, you were a Netsy, you were corny, you know what I mean, for promoting yourself on the internet at one point in time. People forget. And so anyway,
so did you live by did you have this back then backpacker stigma?
I mean, yeah, definitely with certain homies and stuff. You know what I mean? They're like, oh, you make that backpack rap.
Right, like, that was the big stigma back then.
Oh yeah, for sure, man. Like, people love putting you in a box. You know what I mean? So what I learned is that box isn't as small as people think a lot of times. And that box, because that box is metaphorically, it has different corners. There's different areas of that box. And a lot of times when people outside looking in, they really don't know what's in there. So I learned to kind of explore that lane, and then I found opportunities outside of that world. And so me being in the anime, me being in the video games, young or whatever, and influencing somebody like my nephew, that led to my nephew then taking me to conventions with him when he grew up. And then when I got into conventions, I didn't realize it before I got there, but I had a good amount of people who were fans of my stuff. I'm just there being a fan like everybody else. But people would constantly come up to me like, yo, you're substantial, right? And I realized I had a ton of fans in these spaces. And so I started doing shows, conventions, pay way better than a nightclub or a dive bar, right? And and there's a lot of people who are composers for soundtracks and stuff like that. So I would meet these people in those spaces. And then I got other homies that was producing like EDM, and a lot of dudes who are like real hip hop purists. They're not going to rap on certain things. And I'm a hip hop, listen, I'm a hip hop aficionado, right? I love it as much as most. I'm a bit of a hip hop historian as well. However, I love music, period. And so my goal wasn't this to put myself in this quote unquote box and just be a hip hop artist. My goal was to be a musician, a serious musician. And so that allowed me to work with a lot of people outside of hip hop who were into these things like licensing, and that's how I got those opportunities,
Excellent. 2011, you seem to have a cancer scare.
Yeah. So I was just at work one day and noticed some stuff with my body, and so it was crazy because I just got into the office, no one was there yet. But I had this moment where I realized something was up. So I called my wife, let her know what I experienced, and then we called my doctor, set up an appointment, and and then they ended up. I ended up doing. I know the name of the procedure, man. I'm blacking out a lot today, boy. Trying
I
to
figured
remember
you'd
all the stuff.
remember that. I figured you'd remember this one. You remember the name of the
Yeah,
procedure. I can understand the go-go description, but like
yeah,
friggin'
right,
kids.
right. Colonoscopy. That's what the procedure is called. Yeah.
Yes.
So yeah, so I had a colonoscopy, and the doctor did a biopsy on a growth that he found and said it was precancerous. So and they kept telling me how lucky I was because a lot of people are told not to go to get the procedure that I got done, the colonoscopy. They told me not to. They tell most people not to get that procedure until you're like 50 or something, right? Um, Keep in mind, bro, I'm like 30, 31 at the time that I got
Damn.
this.
Damn.
And so if I had waited that long, I would have had full on cancer. You know what I mean? So so they examined it or whatever, made some recommendations, and then I had this surgery that removed part of my large and small intestines where that growth was, because they did a procedure where they scraped it away and then it started to grow back. And so they just removed that section, and I've been checked multiple times since then, clean bill of health. And so, count my blessings, man.
Yeah,
Universe was looking out.
and they're really going heavy these days about getting people to screen for colon cancer and all that
Yeah,
stuff.
for sure, man.
That's
Yeah, and if you're African American too, this is something a white doctor told me. So, but he had a lot of experiences. The top dude in Maryland for this, and he gave me a gem. And when he was telling me all this stuff, there's a video on my YouTube channel where I record me meeting with him, because there was so much information, so much education, man, that he dropped on me. I was like, yo, I need more people to have access to this.
right.
But what he told me, he was like, man, if you're, whatever age they put out there that you should get this done, he's like, if you're African American, get it done 5 years earlier, right? Because there's certain, I mean, some of us live in food deserts, and that's not just strictly an African American thing. That's a folks who are struggling in general, right? Like depending on where you can afford to live limits like how much access you have to fresh foods and different things like that. And your diet, lack of exercise, all of these things could definitely give you an early death sentence. So
Were you not eat? Did you find yourself not eating right back then? Were you like not? Because you seem like you weren't like a real big heavy guy. You were pretty
yeah.
decent shape, right?
Yeah, so I'm healthier. I would say I eat healthier than most people, even back then. But
Right.
prior to that, prior to like certain changes I made in my life, like my diet used to be terrible, bro. Like I changed my diet like in high school, and that was because of a health scare I had then. I got diagnosed with high blood pressure when I was like 14.
Damn.
Um, yeah. So I was taking the same medication that they had, like my mom, people who were like 30, 40 years older than me was on this medication. I didn't know any kids who were on high blood pressure medication. But
Wow.
but having that first scare when I was 14, that's what made me change my diet then. But you know, but it's one of those things that, I mean, it's a combination of a lot of things. You could be eating healthier, but then there's certain things you're eating, like if you're eating smoked meats,
Yeah.
even if you're eating something like lox, right?
Yeah. No, it's
Smoked
not good.
salmon. Yeah, smoked meats a lot of times is not a
What
good
is it?
look.
It's called the carna
Carcinogens.
carcinogens. That's what it
Yeah,
is.
they have
That's
cancer causing
the
agents in it. And so
all
I
you
knew,
bacon, man. All you guys eating bacon out there. Be away. Be aware.
yeah, yeah. And I mean, when I was younger, bacon, I used to go in on bacon. I got a bit older, and stopped eating pork, and stopped eating beef and things like that.
Cold
I,
cuts.
yeah, bro. I used to have a ton of cold cuts. That was like
Cold
my regular
cuts.
routine when I moved to Brooklyn. Get
Oh.
a hoagie from the corner store. You know what I mean?
Hoagie, I like that. You don't hear that
Yeah,
too much. Then well, congrats. Good. Thank God you survived all that stuff, man.
yeah.
That's not
Thank you,
easy.
bro.
That's especially go through that as young as you did, man. Holy crap.
Yeah,
I
appreciate
guess
it.
better. I guess better going through that younger than older because your body can bounce back better. I
That's
guess.
exactly what my doctor said.
Oh yeah, right.
Right, right.
Oh, good. Right.
Hmm.
So I want to talk about your relationship with Mellow Music Group and Odyssey because you mentioned
Sure.
it in your bio, and I'm a fan of both of those. I love what Mellow Music has done. I love Odyssey's music. Done a few Odyssey shows.
Mhm.
Talk about
Yeah.
that and how that all happens and where that's at.
Yeah. So I met Odyssey, I forget the year, but it was at Scribble Jam. I think it might have been like '06 or something like that. So I met
Real
him at
Jam.
Scribble. Yeah, right. Took you back, right?
It's so
Um,
shocking how long ago that is now. You know what I mean?
yo,
It's
it's
just
wild.
scary, scary.
Yeah, for sure, man. But I met him at Scribble Jam. The moment I realized him, Ken Starr, and all of these dudes were from where I was from,
Right.
instantly I was like, oh man, I'm rooting for y'all by default, and they were dope. So yeah, man, when they would come and do stuff in NY, I try to show up and support because I really like the music they was making, and again, they were from my hometown. So if I was performing or lived in a region where they were doing their thing, I tried to show up and support. So yeah, so Odd and I started talking a bit more. I was working with an agent that would book my stuff for Japan. This is before Odyssey like really popped. So like he was in talks with the same guy. We were talking about doing like a collaboration joint with IMI's Marad back then, and like that didn't pan out, but I was going through some difficulties with Q and 5 at that moment. Like it's still all love and stuff, but like there were some things and stuff that we had issues with, and so I was looking for an alternative route to put out the next record. And I remember the conversation, ironically enough, I had with No while I was on tour. Because while I was on tour, whoever was driving got to control the music. And so I was playing a ton of DMV hip hop, while we were on tour. And so they were hearing like Odyssey, they were hearing Ken Starr, they were hearing Kev Brown a lot, Diamond District, all that stuff. I was playing them, and of course my crew as well. Um, and so Odyssey, not Odyssey, No from Cunning Linguist, I asked him, I was like, yo, I'm about to gear up to work on this next record. What advice would you have for me? In terms of what I need to do to keep this momentum going. And he was like, man, I think the next project you do should be like a full collaboration with like just one producer. He was like, yo, like you seem to be cool. He with your man Odyssey. He's like, holla at him about producing something for you. Or if that can't pan out, he's like, man, I'd be down to do something. And it was funny he said that because at that time I was already writing something with Marcus D, who's a Seattle, who's from Seattle originally. So we were
Yep.
working on just that type of project already. However, for my next solo, I hadn't figured out what that was going to look like. So when the issue started happening, I hit up Odd and was just like, yo, I started work on my third album. However, it's looking like I might need to find a different route in terms of putting it out. I know we had already been working and he was producing some stuff for me and then also curating the other production that was coming in. So then he was like, man, I think with what we got right now, I could let Mike from Mellow hear it. I'm pretty sure he'd be interested in doing something with you. So I sent that to him, and then while I was on tour in Japan, I see the email from Mike was like, "Yeah, man, let's do this." He sent the contract, and so yeah, I did my third album with them. I wasn't signed to the label. I wasn't signed to Mellow Music, but Mellow Music licensed that album to put it out. You know what I mean? But yeah, man, it was definitely a good time. A lot of great press came with that record. I think a lot of people outside of the circles who were familiar with me before that, it introduced me to a wider audience because obviously they had a ton of support. Because I think historically I've been very slept on, because of some of the dope people I'm associated with. I get introduced to people who are very loyal to them, and I don't expect no one to jump ship per se. I'm always like, hey man, it's enough room for all of us, right? I ain't trying to take people fans. I'm just trying to let other folks know I exist. That's it. And then I make sure I keep the core fans who rock with me in spite of whatever, keep them engaged. And so there was another opportunity to really expand my brand and my fan base and get my music on more ears, you know.
Absolutely. Why do you think you slept on?
I think it's partly because you know, I make a lot of reflective music, and I feel like anybody, there's a lot of artists that be out here on their tough guy stuff, and you know, it's like I came up around that. You know what I mean? It's like that's the environment I grew up in, so I know that world like really well. But I also know that a good amount of the homies I came up with, because I had talent with art, because I had talent with music, a lot of my quote unquote big brother drug dealer homies, they do what they did to kind of keep me away from certain things when I was young. You know what I mean? And then I had opportunities where I got to go to schools outside of my neighborhood because of how I was tested, because of my artistic ability. So yeah, man. So a lot of the folks that was into that, like both in my family and outside of my family, did what they could to kind of keep me focused on what I was doing and supported me doing other things, and didn't necessarily encourage me to do that. So I think, you know, sometimes, like for some people, the type of stuff I make can be viewed as like corny, you know what I mean, or soft, or it's all of this. I don't know if we can curse or not, but all of this stuff I don't really care. Okay, we can't. So basically, all this shit I don't really give about. You know what I'm saying? Like it's, you know, because I came up in a certain environment, like, you know, I was constantly tested by certain folks and stuff like that, and like, and in certain moments had to get down and show them, you know, like, yo, you feel how you feel, but you know what I'm saying, like it ain't nothing sweet over here. So I might, you know, I might do this different stuff, but I'm from the same environment a lot of these dudes are from. I just don't feel the need to kind of stick my chest out and kind of prove the this, that, and the third. And I don't judge nobody for making that, but I also feel like, fam, that's covered. There's enough of that shit in the world. You know what I mean? So I just try to make stuff that is very much focused on the world I've built around me for like myself and my family. So I talk about what we're doing. I talk about, like, you know, I'm very focused on this youth work and or this education stuff I've been doing, this cultural diplomacy stuff. And it ain't cool to talk about until somebody who's, what I see with it's funny, man. Like people so fake and corny, bro. It's like, it's a lot of the stuff I do or certain artists do is corny until the artist that you deemed as cool or that you've been riding for a long period of time, until they come along and then they basically start talking about the exact things that I built my career on. And then they're like, oh, yo, that's what's up. See, this is what I'm saying, man. We need more people. I'm like, bro, this music has existed. The stuff you say you want, it's been here, bro. I know, because I've been making it for over 20 years, but you want it a certain way from certain people. You want certain bells and whistles, and I ain't got that budget. You know what I'm saying? So, but I've been making this grown man hip hop, this substance based like hip hop. That's been my whole career. And you know, I was making it when it wasn't cool to make. Um, and you know, making songs celebrating the women in my life and stuff like that. You know, and they ain't nothing new to hip hop. Of course, you have people like Pac and many others doing that. But yeah, bro, like it wasn't earning me a bunch of brownie points early in my career. You know what I'm saying? It actually made the initial journey a bit harder. But I think that's why my core audience is so strong, and the community I've built around what I do is what it is. And a lot of people don't have that foundation I had because I stayed true to my authentic self. And so, you know, but yeah, that's a long-winded answer, but yeah.
Well, you caught the notice of Chuck D, who was quoted calling you one of the great MCs of our time. So you were not that slept on.
Right, right. Yeah, yeah. People definitely started to wake up after a while, man. A fan on YouTube popped up the other day and he was like, bro, man, I'm sorry, man. I slept on you for like 10 years, bro. Like, and it was wild because it ain't even like he heard, I don't know if he heard the new album and then that made him go back and check
Right.
out my third album that he commented on. But I think what Chuck told me when the same night he said that on stage, what he said to me privately was like, yo, he was like, keep doing what you're doing, making the type of music you're making and making the moves you're making. He's like, because if you do that, you'll have a 50-year career. And of course, I'm doing the numbers in my head, like, damn, that's a woo. Well, I'm gonna be up there, right? Based on what you're saying. But his point is, like, I think these things that we talk, like this stuff that I talk about, this foundation that I build, if I continue to stand on this isn't something fickle. This ain't something fly by night. Like, these are things that will always be relevant. Like, taking care of your family is gonna forever be relevant, fam. That's always the thing to do. You know, talking about what's going on in our communities and lifting each other up and providing resources to folks, like, that's always in fashion, dog. Like, that's always the move. And so yeah, as long as I stay true to those things and I continue to talk about what I talk about and take the approach that I take it, I see exactly what he's saying now, which it was hard to process at that moment 5 years ago when he said it, but I see it clearly now, you know.
Right. So talk about substantial arts and music. This is the business you created, which is talk about that and what the point, the agenda and the mission statement is with that.
Yeah. So Substantial Art and Music, we're a consulting service that serves creative entrepreneurs, both visual performing and visual performing artists, also small businesses. We provide various resources from like for example, we teach music and art business classes. We also we help people with crowdfunding. We help them better monetize what they do. We also help people apply for grants. My wife / business partner is a former grants manager, and so we have a lot of experience in taking non-traditional paths or like paths that folks don't even know exist, to help fund the various things that we do. And we spent a large amount of time advising a ton of the artists around us. You'd be surprised, like some of the names, right? Like of folks that have hit us up asking for advice. Even before we had a business and I give credit to my man Kokai all the time because I was hanging with him at a recording academy function, that we were at in Virginia, and having a conversation about social media marketing with someone who didn't really understand social media. And it started off as a conversation with me and one other person that led to like 20 people standing around really trying to process what I was saying. And that's when my bro Kokai was like, bro, you need to be consulting. And so he consults and but I took his advice and talked to my wife about shifting our focus so much. We were more focused on trying to serve young people at first, which is my background. But we realized it's like, yo, this education is needed, severely needed amongst a lot of our peer group. So we shifted focus and now we're here.
What's a big thing that people like? Give me one thing if you can, like the big thing that artists don't know that you seem to inform people about.
There's so many things, but
give me one that stands out.
Yeah, I think what happens with most folks are trying to blow up before putting their business in order. Now, I'm not saying you can't simultaneously do both, right? But a lot of times people like have a moment where they pop off, and once they pop off, they realize how many things they have not done, right? Like they realize there's a whole lot that they haven't done. And so now they're working backwards. Now, if they had certain things in place, for example, if they had an e-commerce store already set up, like a certain moments are coming. Like for example, if you're applying for a chance to get on this big TV show and compete with other people who do what you do, right? But prior to doing that, you haven't bothered to set up a website. You haven't set up e-commerce, and people don't even have an excuse no more. They'll be like, "Oh, I can't afford that." I'm like, bro, you can't afford $20 a year to give you a .com and then set up a Bandcamp page and then just reroute the .com to go to the Bandcamp page where you're selling physical merch. You can't do that, son. $20 a year. Your shoes cost $300, son. You sound crazy. Like, what are we talking about right now? And so just basic things like that, right? Taking the time to make sure stuff like that is secured and locked in, and protecting your brand and stuff, locking down your name, making sure that the brand across various social media stuff is like it's clear, right? Like people know when they found you, they ain't got to play the guessing game. So that's the basic thing I see for most folks. They're focused more on I think getting their popularity up or celebrity more than they are a sustainable business model. You know what I mean? So
It's like they're trying to build a career on an unstable foundation.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
So you gotta have a good foundation, man. You know what I mean? You
Mhm.
gotta make sure the foundation's taken care of, or that shit's crumbling.
Yeah, for sure, man. Yeah, good amount of our clients, it's oftentimes people working backwards, you know what I mean? Or at least the people who reach out initially are folks working backwards. And it's no fault of their own. They weren't taught that. So I wasn't taught that.
Right.
So it's something that you got to do the research to learn,
Right. So we're talking about merch and e-commerce. I went on your Bandcamp to check out your new album, Adultish,
Mhm.
because it's only on Bandcamp.
But
And
now, yeah.
for now. And I did notice your merch game on there. It was you got the vinyl, you got the
Mhm.
t-shirt, you got the CD. I mean, if you
Mhm.
guys want an example of what he's talking about, just go to Substantial's Bandcamp. It's impressive.
Thank you,
Let's
man.
talk about this new album, or this deluxe version of it, or let's talk about it.
Sure, sure. So the new album is called Adultish.
Yeah.
I always like to say it's for grown-ups that got more growing to do, right?
And I just want to
One
stop
thing,
you real quick.
yeah,
One quick on this. You put the definition of it on the t-shirt, and it was awesome. What was the definition?
yeah, yeah. What was it? I got it right here.
Oh, come on. I was like, oh, it was great because I'm gonna buy one after this. I was like, I'm getting
Yeah,
this.
man.
I
Oh
couldn't
man, I
get it in time.
appreciate that.
Yeah, I
It's
got you,
of
bro.
or suitable for a grown-up that with more growing to do, right?
Hold on, say that again. Say that again.
Yeah, it's of or suitable for a grown-up with more growing to do. That's how I define adultish, right? And it's funny, right? Like that definition, it's funny how it can be perceived to different people. But the core, like because so I see some people, like perfect example. I'm set up at an event, the shirt is set up. I see like a woman walking with her man. She'll see the definition and then she'll point to her husband and start laughing, right? Like, on some I'm pretty much with a man child or something, right? And that's not really what I'm saying. What I'm saying is like this is my concept of it is we all should be working toward being lifetime learners, right? So sometimes I feel like grown folks, you'll hear people of a certain age say things like, oh, I'm blah 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 years old. You know what I mean? I am who I am. I ain't changing for nobody. You know what I mean? Like I've learned all that I need to learn and I'm good. It's pretty much what that sounds like to me. And for me, I think the advantage of being in the industry that we're in is that this industry changes all the time, fam. So I'm constantly forced to learn new things to make sure that my career can be sustained, right? But outside of the business, that's life in general, right? Things might work a certain way today, but like the government wake up one day and decide that, okay, we're changing this. Now you got to pivot and adjust based on that, or your job. These things happen throughout our lives. And so
Yeah.
I feel like this album is really for folks who like me who recognize that, like, man, regardless of how old we are, you got more growing to do. We can always be better than we were before. And then it's also for the hip hop head. I feel like hip hop heads are in a really unique space where hip hop is a lot of times associated with the youth. But so what happens when the folks who were kids doing this grow up and become old men and women, right? Like, are you no longer hip hop? Like I'm still gonna dress a certain way. I ain't got my cap on right now like you, but like it's right over there. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm
I
still
like
gonna
this
wear.
shirt though. I like that shirt you
Oh,
got
thank
there.
you, man. You know what I'm saying? My dashiki game stay
Oh, it's
on
a full
point. Thank you.
dashiki. I thought it was, but I wasn't sure.
Yeah, yeah, man. I was a shout out the Delkus collection. I'm an
Dope.
ambassador for them, so I got
Dope.
way too many dashikis. Um,
I love it.
yeah, yeah, but but yeah, man, it's very much like when you grow old in hip hop, it's dope that we're celebrating
Older.
older, right? Grow older in hip hop. And it's dope we're celebrating 50 years of it, because I think it's a great reminder for like, yo, so many of these people who we're celebrating at this moment were here like from the beginning or close to the like just those golden years of it, and they're still doing amazing things, right? And we're celebrating that. And so I think it's important for us to celebrate us growing older, because there's a lot of ageism in hip hop where the youngins and the old heads are constantly pitted against each other. And I feel like the old heads, we don't always do a great job of making growing older look cooler, right? So that's you know what I mean? Like, oh man, enjoy your youth, because once you hit this age, you know what I mean? Like little things like that we say to young people, and just how we live. So this album is really kind of celebrating growing like gracefully growing older, and growing every day, and just trying to be a great example to the youngest coming up after me, some of which I work with directly, and the ones who are watching from afar. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what you said there. I believe in remaining teachable,
Mm-hmm.
right? Always learning, remain teachable, and then remaining useful. Those are the two things.
Mm-hmm.
As I get older,
Yeah.
like, what I mean? As long as you're useful and, you still have room to learn, you can be effective.
100%.
Yeah, yeah. So what else we got in the pipeline?
Man, what was it? Couple of performances and stuff here and there. Got
Yeah.
supposed to be at Otakon, which is an anime convention in Washington D.C. I'll be there this weekend doing this event that I do with my company, Substantial Art and Music. We do this event called Sketchpads. It's a live art and music lounge. So I basically do. I'm doing a beat set there. The new album Adultish is 100% produced by me. Also features a lot of live instrumentation from the homies too. But yeah, so I'll be doing a beat set with beats from that project, and also beats from a project called Animal Arithmetic, which is a manga by Katie Fox that I produced the soundtrack for. So showcasing that, she'll be the featured artist, drawing live, doing showcasing some of the work she's done on the manga. And yeah, so that's happening this weekend. Um, Outside of that, man, I just recently found out I'm gonna be doing more cultural diplomacy work. Supposed to be
Talk
going
more
back
about what the
overseas.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Talk about more about the cultural diplomacy. What exactly does that
Sure.
mean?
Yeah. So cultural diplomacy is like, so think of it as an exchange, right? And so in this particular instance, we're exchanging our knowledge of hip hop, our love and our passion of hip hop. So through Words Beats and Life is one organization I work with, and then another organization is Next Level. So through them, they'll send me to like a country that hosts us, and we'll do a residency that'll be a week long. Sometimes it'll be 2 weeks. And like through Next Level, I was there specifically working with local MCs in Timișoara and Bucharest in Romania. And I went there and like I watched them do like performances and stuff, performed for them, and then gave them notes, right, on how to better themselves, right? But as performers, but then also learned about because that's the thing, for it to be cultural diplomacy, it has to be some type of exchange. So I also learned about the music industry and about the culture there, right? Like what works, what doesn't, based on my knowledge, right? And then I try to expand my knowledge by learning their industry, so I can better advise and better advise them, point them in some directions, and then see what resources that I have access to are relevant to them and can work for them. And so, like something as simple as a lot of them are limited to whatever the scene is in their country. And so what I tell them is, because a lot of them would like to do what I'm doing, right? Like tour and go to other places. But like, who wants to hear them rap in their native language outside of their country? Because they don't speak, because they're not doing it in English, right? And if you're a hip hop artist, you're kind of limited a lot of times to like places that are familiar with the language that you're quote unquote rapping in. And English is the
Right.
biggest one in the world. So something is, here's a gem that I share with them, right? It's like, okay, first question I have was like, what's the next country outside of the one you're in that has the largest population of people from here. And it's funny, as soon as I say that, they you can see the wheels turning because they're trying to understand why I'm asking that. So they'll answer, and I'm like, okay, bet. That's a city you can tour in. That's a city you can go to and perform. Because if they had, like, if that city has like, or that country has millions of people, and then in this one particular city, there's a couple 100,000 or a million people who are originally from here, and you speak that language and make music in that language, that city will likely book you to come do a thing out there. Or you could just set up a time to visit, network with some folks, find some people, find places, find restaurants, network with people from where you're from, and figure out where in the world they are. And just to put that in perspective, while I was out there, I found out that a radio person that I work with or know of in the DMV, I found out that they were from Romania originally. So the first thing they said, they was like, yo, man, if any of these folks ever make it out here, please put me in contact. And I'm like, bro, this is what I'm talking about, right? So yeah, man, and I see that in my travels, no matter where I go in the world. If somebody in this space is from Maryland or the DMV, instantly, right? We instantly connect. And I remember performing at Osaka and somebody in the crowd screaming like PG County up here. And I was like, yeah, that's crazy. Right. And so I want that for other artists. So when I travel abroad and stuff, you know, I these are things I consider. So that's what part of what the cultural diplomacy is. You know, we're spreading hip hop through the world and reminding people what hip hop was built on, which is peace, love, unity, and having fun. So part of that sometimes with Next Level is having conversations about conflict transformation, because that's very much what hip hop did, right?
Conflict transformation. I love that term. I haven't
Yeah,
heard that
man.
one. Yeah.
Yeah, that I mean, yo, that's the foundation of hip hop.
I'll be working on some. I'll be working on some conflict transformation with some of my relationships. I need to work on some of that.
Aren't we all? Aren't we all? You know?
Conflict seems to be coming in waves sometimes. You know, I need to transform that.
Sure.
The other thing I forgot to bring up earlier is you as a producer. You've you've been when I was looking up you online, you've been associated kind of with this jazz lo-fi sound. I read something.
Yeah.
Is that, can you speak more on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny, man. Like, you know, a lot of times we aren't responsible for naming the stuff. We just make a thing, and then someone decides, hey, this is that.
Here's
I mean, a lot of the jazz hop stuff or the jazz rap stuff is really like inspired by a lot of early to mid '90s hip hop, right? Like, you know, the native tongues of the world were sampling.
Gangstar.
Yeah, Gangstar, all of these folks who were sampling a lot of jazz records and stuff. And so I come from that. And you know, I wasn't putting out music professionally when those artists were, but that's who I was listening to, dreaming of being able to do what they were doing. So listening to them made me get it more into jazz. And so naturally, as I started making beats young, that's the type of tracks that spoke to me, because that was my foundation. And so when I started putting my own stuff out, like we were kind of like the next generation of you know, hip hop that was inspired or sampled jazz. And then we also started pulling on some of our friends who grew up on the same stuff, who also played live instruments too, and incorporating that stuff in there, which sometimes makes it feel a bit softer than like maybe what some people prefer. But again, like, you know, for me, it's just about good music, you know what I mean? And so yeah, man, it wasn't necessarily like a branding choice early on. It was just me doing a thing. And over time, like my brand became associated with those sounds. It took
So what about the lo-fi aspect? Because that's a term that's a newer term that's been thrown around a lot. It seems to be popular, but it seems a very loose term of what it actually is. I'm curious your definition.
So like, I mean, you know, and again, I'm not the one who coined the term. So like it's strictly how, like, what I see people associate with the sound, right? Like, so when you think of lo-fi, right, like people you know, a lot of people in the scene will tell you that they took inspiration from like people like Nujabes, people like Dilla, right? Because like you'll see like a lot of the sample choices in terms of what they're sampling, you know, which leans very heavy to what Nujabes was into sonically. But then some of the percussion and how the drums are moving feel a little bit like Dilla inspired, right? In some cases. And so yeah, man. I mean, it's a slower thing. It's mostly instrumental. There is some lo-fi hip hop with people rapping on it, obviously, as well. But yeah, man, it's just a more there's no nice way to say it. This doesn't sound good to say, but it's damn near like a smooth jazz version of like of rap or hip hop. You know what I mean? You know, and it's just like a more chill thing. Like people prefer. What I noticed, a lot of folks who would hit me up early in my career asking for instrumentals all the time, and I used to be, as a rapper, that just feels offensive, right? Like, hey, yo, that's what you put. What's the where can I find the instrumental of that? I'm like, yo, tell me I'm a whack rapper without saying I'm a whack rapper. Where can I find the instrumental of your song, son? And so it took me a long time to realize that wasn't what they were saying, right? Eventually I started noticing these study playlists, right? Like these playlists for people who were studying, and those people preferred chill, laid back instrumentals. And there became enough of a demand for that it became a whole, you know, a whole scene, and it's a worldwide thing. And so now it's not just for studying, now it's workplace music, right? Now it's coffee shop vibes. It's all over. So
you go ahead.
No, it's fine.
You have you have a beat called Closing that's on your Spotify page. It's got more streams than any of your rapping songs.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
How did that happen? Did you just end up on certain playlists that were like what we just talked about? Like, how did that get so many streams compared to everything else?
Yeah, that's part of it, 100%. There's a line, well, there's a line I say in a different song. There's this line I got in a song called "Say Less," where I said, "The moment I said less, my streaming spiked." Right, earned enough, but I can't exit till my team is right. So I landed on the lo-fi, I landed on which playlist was it? Was it lo-fi beats? I think I was the lo-fi beats playlist. That instrumental ended up on there. And you know, that instrumental, when I first landed on it, I think had close to 500,000 followers. By the time they took me off of it, my track was on there for like 2.5 years, which is insane because a lot of playlists will put you on there for a couple months or maybe a week in some cases. So, right. So yeah, when I landed on that playlist and they kept me on there for 2.5 years, at the peak of that track, it was averaging like 7,000 to 8,000 plays sometimes in a day. Right. I think, matter of fact, the peak day I think was like 10 to 11,000, which was crazy. So, oh man, listen, thank you, I appreciate it. Listen,
we all aspire to get that at some point, right? You know, a lot of us. You know?
So now that's where like it talks to the how, right? Like, and this is part of what my company teaches. Like, you know, a good amount of people know how to pitch their music to editorials, but most people don't. Like, most people don't realize that for all the evil that Spotify does or is accused of doing, one of the cool things they do is allow you to pitch directly to the editorial for free, right? So, you know, that particular track, I didn't have a whole team working it. You know what I mean? I knew I could pitch it. That track wasn't a throwaway per se, but it was just the outro music to my weekly thing I would do on YouTube, right? On Sundays, called Substantial Sundays. And so that was just the closing music for the show. You know, so when I made the beat, I started playing it on the show, and then one day I was like, man, I should just put this on streaming platforms, right? And so I just did it. Didn't have an elaborate rollout plan. I didn't pitch it to a whole bunch of DJs, or I just literally I submitted it to my distributor. When I got the notification that it was available for pitching on Spotify, I wrote up the thing and I pitched it. Prior to that, I had already had success getting another instrumental of mine that has like 1.4 million streams this track I did called Beyond the Stage, the instrumental version with Uyama Hiroto. So I got that on 2 editorial playlists earlier that same year. And so, yeah, so I knew it was possible. So I was just like, man, I'll shoot my shot again, see if they dig this. And then it popped off and became a whole thing. And then fast forward, Snoop Dogg, one of his sons, you know, oh man, I know his name. Jesus Christ, I know this man's name.
Well, we're
I'm
forgetful
doing
today.
this a lot, boy. Showing my age. But yeah, one of his sons hit me up, you know, and he basically had heard the instrumental at a ramen shop. He's like, man, I usually go there and just vibe to whatever beats they playing and sometimes write some stuff. And he was like, man, your beat came on and I wrote a whole song, dog. Like, and so he just reached out, you know, and Calvin, yeah, Calvin Love is what I think he go by. And yeah, man, he just hit me up and licensed the beat for me and then released the song with the joint, with that same instrumental. So that beat, man, like, it's crazy. I wouldn't say. I mean, I guess maybe it's kind of the closest thing I have to like an underground hit. Outside of the stuff I did with Nujabes, but I'll take it. You know what I mean? You know.
You take it, man. We'll take it. Story of the underground. You know.
Yeah.
We'll take it.
Right.
Well, man, I really appreciate it, brother. I really appreciate the time.
I appreciate you, man.
Anything else you want to shout out while we're here? Close out.
Yeah, man. Just shout out to you know, all the fans that backed the new album Adultish before they were able to hear most of it and stuff, who supported it on Kickstarter, and then to those of you who pre-ordered it on Bandcamp, man, I appreciate it. You know what I mean? Y'all got me working. There's a stack.
Yeah, let's see the stack real quick because we
Yeah,
tuned in
yeah.
there. Let's take a look at it.
One of a few stacks that I'm going through right now, signing.
Can you
then,
pull
you
one
know,
out? Pull one out and zoom
Yeah,
it and show
yeah.
if you can.
I got you. Yep. So that's the album right there.
Yeah, it's great
That's
packaging work, bro.
Thank you, bro. That, you know, that's that Pratt education paying off. I went to school for graphic design, so
There we go. All right.
Yeah,
well,
man,
I'd like to thank everybody.
Go ahead, sorry. That's sorry.
Oh, good. Well, I'd like to thank everybody for tuning in to the Leedz Edutainment Podcast. A very special guest, Substantial. Thank you, brother. We'll talk soon.
For sure, brother. Thanks for having me, man. You be good.
Right. You too. Later.
Peace.